Welcome to the Fordham Career Center. Join us as we explore the personal stories and career insights of our Fordham community. In each episode, we'll be connecting with students and alumni to hear about how they realized their career path and navigated the job search. We'll be taking you a level deeper, diving into pressing questions about all things career related and figuring out, where do we go from here? Welcome to another episode of Dear Ram, Where Do I Go From Here? My name is Allie, and I am your host, as well as the Assistant Director of Student Engagement at the Rose Hill Career Center. And today, I'm so excited to welcome Akira Komiya to the podcast. Akira is a recent graduate from the Gabelli School of Business with a degree in global business. And 3 fun facts about Akira to kick off today's episode are that he has an 8-month corgi. Amazing. His favorite food is cheeseburgers, and he enjoys film photography. I can't say that I know of anyone who has admitted that cheeseburgers are their favorite food. So I hope you wear that honor with pride, or that badge of honor with pride. And I'm curious, where is your favorite cheeseburger from?
Actually, yeah, that's a good question. I've tried a lot of different burger places in New York. But actually there's one near my house in Japan. Actually, that's better than any burgers I had in the US. But
Wow.
in New York, it's probably like 7th Street, I think. Something like
7th
that,
Street
yeah.
Burger? Yes.
The 7th Street Burger, yeah. I like that.
I've heard many good things about 7th Street Burger, and I'm also writing it down so I can remember it.
Yeah. It's a good place.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, and welcome again to the podcast. One question that I have been asking all guests to kind of kick off all episodes is, what is your macro bio? So basically, the story of your life up until now, so that listeners could get kind of a brief synopsis and introduction to who you are.
Sure, yeah. So I'm Akira, and I'm originally from Japan. I grew up here until I was 14, and then I really wanted to, study abroad and learn English. So I moved to Switzerland by myself. It was a boarding school, and I spent about 4 years there. It was an international school, so they had kids from different countries, like, Spain, France, Switzerland, everywhere. I spent about 4 years then, and then I came here. I came to New York, Fordham. So
Great. So, I mean, as you've just outlined, you obviously bring a really unique multicultural perspective to the table, having been raised in Japan, living in Switzerland, then coming to the US for university. What have you gained as a result of your exposure to those various cultures, and what has been your favorite place or favorite thing about living in those places?
okay, yeah, sure. Maybe, to answer those questions, what I like about Japan is probably the food. I mean, obviously I grew up here, so I like the food, but it's also, really affordable compared to prices in New York. So I really like that.
I'm sure.
Um, yeah, yeah. And Switzerland, I have to say, probably like the nature. It's a beautiful country and super peaceful. But my favorite things about the US, or maybe New York particularly, is probably the energy that the city has. I think everyone's sort of, very motivated and, pursuing their dream, and it's really encouraged, I think, to work hard and pursue your dream. I think that's not really common in Japan, or nor in Switzerland. I feel like, I've never met so many motivated and hardworking people. So yeah, that's probably my favorite things. And, you know, in terms of like being with people from different backgrounds, different culture, so, I think, as you probably know, like Japan's very homogenous country. 98% of the population's Japanese. So, moving from Japan to Switzerland was a pretty big change for me. Um, so, obviously my first roommate was Spanish, and had different people like Russian, Chinese students on my floor. So it was there's a little bit of culture shock as well. But, as you got to spend more time with them, you sort of see that like there's just, you know, different kids, like, even though they have like different cultures, different like, thinking logics. But at the end of the day, like, we're all the same. So I think that's one thing I learned. Yeah. It's like understanding like different cultures
Yeah.
and like accepting it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And obviously you went from Switzerland to New York, and you came here to Fordham. And what
Yeah.
inspired you to pursue global business during your time at Fordham?
So, my dad is a consultant, so I've seen him, do business things. So I was always sort of inspired by that. That's he's also the reason why I wanted to study English because, he has a bunch of meetings in English, and I really wanted to know what he was talking about and like be able to speak English. So, uh, that definitely influenced my decision, to take global business major. Um, but I also think. I mean, I also consider STEM degrees as well. Like I was interested in biology, chemistry,
Hmm.
but I think, yeah, I really wanted to have that like people skills as well. I think that was definitely something that I was able to learn at Fordham through the course. Um, yeah,
Awesome. Yeah, and I know that you held various internships throughout your time at Fordham, primarily in investment banking. Could you kind of walk me through those experiences and what the application process was like as an international
yeah,
student?
sure. My first internship I had, the first paid internship was with the firm called KKR. It's a relatively large private equity fund in the US, based in New York. The position was for their treasury team, basically,
Hmm.
like moving around money and like checking the bank account and like making sure they have enough money to do their investments. So I applied on Handshake, actually. I actually applied on the last day of like the deadline.
Wow.
So, you know, I mean, it's better to apply earlier, but it's never too late, I guess. As long as like within the deadline. I applied on the deadline, and then I applied I submitted my resume, and then I actually cold email a few people. Just went on LinkedIn, looked up their emails, and then like attached my resume, attached like a cover letter, um, and then I got a reply like 2 weeks later.
Wow.
Got my first interview. Yeah, I was really lucky then. After the whole process was like 4 weeks.
Oh, you're breaking up a little bit on me, Akira.
After I submitted my resume, I went on LinkedIn and I looked up the people who worked at KKR at those divisions, and I just, looked at their email and um, sent my resume, sent my cover letter, got my reply in about like 2 weeks, I think, and then got my first round interview, and there were 4 or 5 interviews in total. The process took about like 4 weeks. Um, and then in terms of like applying to jobs as an international student, and for internships, you don't really need, there's not a huge difference between international students and domestic students. Um, the only difference is that you have to get an offer letter and send that to your dean, and then he will process a CPT for you.
Hmm.
And especially if it's a paid internship, you need that CPT to start your internship. Um, so that's probably something to keep in mind and just be open about the fact that you're an international student with your employer. You don't want to surprise them at the end, like after you got an offer, tell them like, oh, by the way, I'm an international student. They'll be like, oh, I didn't know that. Like that's a different process. Like some firms have like, different policies. So it's good to like get that out like in an earlier stage.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Absolutely. And were you often in contact with the office for international students while you were going through these different processes, or was a lot of this covered when you first started here at Fordham?
Well, my earlier um years, like freshman, sophomore years, I used the service a lot, I think,
Hmm.
especially like my freshman year, I went to Career Fair in
A career
Rosedale.
fair? Yeah.
Career Fair, yeah. So, I was freshman then. Um, I've only been at Fordham for like 2 months, I think,
Hmm.
and I don't know anything about like resume. So I went there and they really helped me with like making my own resume and you know printing out like choosing the right paper. and everything, like the thick ones. So I think that initial stage, that was really helpful for me.
Yeah, that's great. And I just wanted to rewind a bit. You talked about networking via LinkedIn in order to get your first internship and sending
Yeah.
cold emails. For a lot of students, justifiably, that is very overwhelming and intimidating.
Hmm.
Are there any tips and tricks you would give to students in terms of how to network to boost themselves in their job or internship search?
Yeah. Well, I think it's more of numbers games as well. You just have to get used to, um, I think first of all, cold emailing, that's probably the easiest part. You're not really actually talking to anyone. You're just like typing emails, like, that's not the scary part. The scary part, I think, is actually getting on a phone call with like people you don't know and you pressured to like make good impression. So I think, you just have to get used to it. You just have to do a lot of that. But, you know, what I realized maybe like after a couple of, networking sessions, probably like just keep the conversation really casual. I think people like that. Like I've been networked in a way,
Mm-hmm.
like a couple of times, and I felt like, you know, students who were really like casual and like having a conversation about like, just a casual thing, like, like what do you do for fun or like different things, I think, than other than like work.
Mm-hmm.
I think that also like I think that's a good networking like method.
Awesome. Yeah. So approaching it with a more go with the flow conversation appeal than speaking like a robot, which I think a lot of us
Yeah.
have the tendency to do when we know we're going into an intimidating situation where we feel like we have to be professional and we get a little bit more uptight.
Hmm.
So keeping it casual, I think, is really great advice.
Yeah. Like, treat them as your like friend or yeah, basically. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, and I know, so you mentioned how you got your first internship at Fordham, and I'm wondering, you held again probably several internships during your time here. What were some similarities and differences between those internships, and how did they inform, your career decision post college?
Yeah, sure. So, you know, so going back to the KKR internship, that job was basically like a treasury job
Okay.
where most of the work that I was doing, um, it's not really a complex
Hmm.
task. So I really enjoy the work. I really like the people. It's a good name to have on your resume, I think. But I didn't really feel like I was challenged every day in a way. The work I was doing was pretty repetitive. So I
Hmm.
wanted to, try something different that is more, I think, challenging. So uh, I started interning at different investment banking um, positions. So I think those jobs were a lot more. Um, I think I'd say it had a lot more variety of types of work that you could do. And it was also like, as people say, like a little bit intense sometimes, just
Hmm.
because, a lot of things you're working on, it's like time sensitive and, long hours are expected also. But um, in terms of like the growth curve, I think, learning curve, I felt like it was a lot more steeper in an environment where I was more challenged, I think.
Hmm.
Yeah. So, to answer your question, I think, yes, I like my internship at KKR, but when I thought about like, my learning opportunity, the learning curves, and like the sort of career I want to have after graduating Fordham, I I thought that, in like maybe 5 years, where would I want to be? If I ask that question, I'll probably want to have a career where like I'm pushed and like I'm challenged, but I'm also growing like at a faster rate.
Yeah, definitely. And do you feel, I know that you're an incoming investment banking analyst at BDA Partners in Japan.
Yeah.
Twofold question here. One, do you feel like you're getting that challenging environment there? And two, you are currently in Japan. So to everyone who is a listener, I'm currently, it's 8:30 or 8:50 a.m. here. It is nighttime for Akira. And were you looking to kind of return to Japan for work post-graduation?
So yeah, so to be completely honest, no, I was not. I was really looking forward to, staying in the US, getting a job in the US, um, for so many obvious reasons. I think, all my friends are here. New York is amazing. Um, but, as an international student, it's really difficult to secure an offer, you know, especially because of the visa.
Mhm.
It's pretty challenging to secure that visa. So there are a lot of things I wish I'd known before, and for the listeners who are maybe international students and want to stay in the U.S., um, I think there are a lot of things that you could do to increase that chance of staying in the U.S.
Mm. What would be some of those things, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, of course. Oh, thanks for asking. So I think one of the major component I think that can increase your chance of staying is having that STEM OPT.
Mhm.
So basically, non-STEM majors like myself have only 1 year to stay in the US after graduation, and we only have one one lottery. So the way it works is that once a year there's a lottery, and you have to win that lottery to stay in the US. The chance of you winning the lottery is probably about 30%, less than 30%. So that's why a lot of US employers don't want to hire you because, you know, well, let's say we hire you and then you only have 30% chance of like actually coming to the firm.
Mhm.
So having that STEM OPT degree, so STEM OPT means that um, if your major is considered STEM, obviously
Mhm.
like biology, chemistry, math, um, you can stay in the US for 3 years without a visa, and that means you can enter the lottery 3 times, or even 4 times depending on which time of the year you graduate or you enter the lottery. So I would definitely consider having that sort of like maybe double majoring in another STEM field. There's also DTAM, I think it's called,
Mhm.
Digital Technology and Immersion Media thing. I think
Yes.
that's what
Yep.
it's
You're
called.
right.
Uh, I'm not sure if it's like a minor or major, but that also gives you like a STEM stamp. So I would definitely consider that. It makes a huge difference when you're applying to like full-time positions or like internships. So something to consider. And also like maybe another thing is that just like try to cast a wide net in terms of
Mhm.
like where you apply to. So my sophomore year, I was applying to like all the big banks, big names, and I actually secured a few interviews. So I thought, I'll probably get to go to these places, like big names, but so I didn't apply to like smaller places, but I think I should have because a lot of the European firms, they tend to sponsor you, which
Mhm.
means, they probably take a chance on you, even if you're an international student. And you should also consider like smaller firm or like even unpaid internships as well, because one, it shows that you're proactive and you get some kind of experience that's better than no experience at all. And actually, those smaller places actually tend to be more flexible in terms of like hiring international students.
Mm.
So one of my roommates, my old roommates actually, he was interning at this renewable energy company. It was an unpaid position, but he worked there for a very long time, like at least like half a year or something before he graduated. And then they really liked him. So even though he was an international student, he was able to sort of, secure a full-time position after graduation.
Mhm.
So I think that's another route that you could possibly take. Just don't neglect smaller, like unknown companies or like unpaid internships because, that's probably better than not having anything at all. So yeah.
Got it. Great. Well, thank you so much for all of that advice. I hope all of our international student listeners take those tips and pointers. But obviously now, even if it wasn't in the original plan, you are at BDA Partners in Japan. And I'm curious, what does kind of a typical day in the life look for you there?
Sure. So I've actually interned at BDA office in New York.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm expecting the work to be relatively similar, aside from like the language. But um, you start around like 9 a.m. and then, you know, early in the day, a lot of things you do is probably just like checking emails and like, so I think to give you like an overview of what an investment bankers do or like, what these like M&A advisory is, um, what you're doing is basically advising companies who are either trying to sell their company or buy another company. And a lot of the work that I was doing at BDA was making like a list of companies that are on
Mm-hmm.
sale and sort of making a profile for those companies, sort of like making a catalog for like, so if company A is looking to acquire like a snack company in the US, you sort of like look it up, make a profile, like make a PowerPoint, put some logos on it, like what are their products, like how much money are they making, um, make a list and basically like make a book. And then you show that to a potential buyer and like ask them like, oh, do you like any of this? Sort of thing like that. And then if they actually do, you help them, do the mergers and acquisition, and you get a little bit of fee there. But as an analyst, a lot of things you'll be working on is, as I said, making like company profiles, or you know, you also have to evaluate those companies. Like if you're trying to buy these companies, like how much would you have to pay for them? There are different methods that you could use to, get those estimate range of valuation. So that's why you hear a lot about like using Excel
Mm-hmm.
and financial models to, make those catalog of, potential companies. But I think those two things are one of the main things that you'd be working on as an analyst, just like making PowerPoints in Excel.
Awesome. And are there any like really interesting deals or projects that you've had the chance to work on while at BDA?
Well, I've I've had a chance to like work on a little bit of like consumer and like healthcare stuff. Um, so you might think like, oh, a lot of PowerPoints, a lot of Excel, like that's not maybe not too exciting. And there are times that's like it's not really a fun project, or like it's not what am I doing? It's like it's not really fun. But I think, investment banking really lets you um learn a lot on the job. So like you're looking up all these companies, and you didn't realize there's so many like organic or like vegan snack companies in the US, and
Mm,
like what are like there's like a trend in the US, like a lot of these like vegan cookie startups are raising like a lot of money, and so there are a lot of learning opportunities. I think that's one thing that's really cool about working at an investment bank. Um, and you also get to work on like different types of projects as well. So yeah, I think that's the fun part.
that's very cool. I didn't know there was such a market in the vegan cookie business, you said?
Yeah, vegan cookie business. Yeah. Um,
Awesome.
yeah.
That's very cool. And one final question here about your current position at BDA. What stood out to you about the company or about the firm relative to its competitors that made you choose this
Mhm.
opportunity?
Yeah. So the firm is actually relatively small. The entire firm is probably about like 150 people. But it has, offices in like I think 7 different locations, primarily based in Asia, like, Shanghai, Hong Kong, Vietnam, but also they
Mm-hmm.
have offices in London and New York. So, sort of their niche market is, bridging the gap between Asia and the West.
Okay.
And I saw myself there, since, I'm obviously Japanese, but speaking English and, that's sort of things I wanted to do, like bridging the gap between the US or the West and Asia. Um, but also I've had the chance to meet the founder of the firm. His name is Yuan Relly, and he works at the New York office, and it's a really small firm, but
Mm-hmm.
I really like that aspect of like having really close relationship with your colleagues and like colleagues from other parts of the world, like so I really like that like small kind of like family vibe. um but yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Kind of goes back to your very deeply multicultural roots, getting exposed to all these different places and people. Sounds like you're getting that as well at BDA. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it's a pretty
And
diverse place.
yeah, that's fantastic. And I know we've obviously been talking about all of these amazing and incredible and reputable internships and jobs you've had, but I want to take it back to the beginning for a moment because I saw on the resume that you sent to me that you were an Uber Eats delivery person during the
Yeah.
pandemic. And the reason I wanted to bring this into the conversation is because I know a lot of our first and second year students, they often don't know how to frame their like service or retail
Hmm.
experience on a resume, and they feel like it's usually not relevant or worthy enough to put on a resume, which is very much not the case. So I'm wondering from you, one, why put it on the resume,
Yeah.
and two, why was that experience important to you and what did you gain from it?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think everyone should put like whatever they have on their resume, especially like if you're freshman, sophomore. Um, the reason I put my, Uber Eats delivery, um, it's like it seems like nothing related to finance or like investment banking. But, one first reason is that like I think it's kind of like eye-catching. Like I think it makes you stand out a little bit. Everybody knows what Uber Eats is, and like, a lot of people use it. But, I like I've had a networking session where I tell them like, oh, I used to do like Uber delivery, and they often find it like pretty surprising. So I just decided to put it there, just to make it like just make my resume like more interesting and like sort of like stand out from like other resumes. Um, but also I think it shows you like that, I'm a proactive person, like, you know, um, even like basic things like I've proactively tried to like, do something, not just like sit at home, watch Netflix. Um, so maybe one thing I learned through that like job, it's really basic job. Like it's not difficult, but because it's so basic, you get to learn like, you know, value of your time, or like the value of money, basically. Like one
Mm-hmm.
delivery you do, I did it in Japan. It's a little, maybe it's a little bit different, but one Uber Eats delivery is probably like I probably earn like $4 or $5.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that much, depending on like how far like the destinations are. But I was on a bicycle, and like I rode on a bicycle. Like I like bike. I didn't mind. Like it's like doing exercise and you're getting paid. But it takes about like 30 minutes to do one delivery, and then you only get like $4 or $5. So, I think it really teaches you in a way, like the value of money. Like, oh, like next time, like I'm trying to buy a game, it's like $20. It's like, oh, it's like 5 hours of my time. So I think that's like on a really basic, like fundamental level, like teaches you like what money is worth, or like how much time is worth. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, in addition to showing you the value of money, I'm sure Uber Eats, especially during the pandemic, was probably really booming. And you had a lot of people to deliver food to since people were not going to grocery stores. So I'm sure you
Yeah.
learned how to operate within a fast-paced environment.
Oh
I'm sure it
yeah.
improved your customer service skills, having to interact with so many people. Again, as you said, you got a lot of exercise through that experience.
Hmm.
So there's so many little soft skills that you build
Hmm.
along the line that I'm sure really still do aid you today, or I hope they do.
Yeah, of course. And of course, and And also I feel like, because it's so simple, such a simple task, just delivering food. But if you think of it like a little game, or like a little puzzle, it's like, oh, like if I do like five more deliveries, like, like it'll be like my 10th deliveries of like the day. And, that sort of mindset is really important because, no matter what kind of job you'll have, like the first job you will have like straight out of undergrad, it's probably going to be like not boring, I'd say,
Hmm.
but a lot of the work or a lot of the tasks you're going to have is very simple. Um, and maybe like a little bit boring tasks. But in times like that, you have to like just think of it like a game and like just try to make it more interesting to yourself. So, I think that really helps a lot.
Yeah, it's a job where you always have to be on your feet. You're not confined to a cubicle. You're always on the run, which I'm
Yeah.
sure is really exhilarating and fun as well. So I am glad you got to have that experience.
Yeah.
And outside of your kind of professional experience and professional life, as mentioned in the beginning of this podcast, you also enjoy and do film photography.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that, especially here at the Career Center and at Fordham as a whole. We try to promote Cura Personalis or care for the whole person. And I
Hmm.
think really investing in those hobbies and extracurricular activities, you do take care of yourself as a whole person. So yeah, if you could expand on that more, I would love to hear about it, and I'm sure the listeners would as well.
Yeah, sure. So I first got into it in Switzerland. There are a lot of like film photographers in the little town I used to live in. It's called Lausanne. And it was a new experience for me. I mean, taking pictures for me at least used to be like just on my phone or like I had like a little digital camera. And it's so easy to take like thousands of pictures. But think about like film photography is, it takes a lot of time to develop. Like you can only take like 36 pictures at a time, and you won't get to see the pictures you took until you develop it, which probably takes like, well, you have to go to like a shop and like get it developed. You have to pay like, I think 20-30 bucks to like get it
Mm.
developed. And, then you finally get to see the pictures you took. And, it looks different. It has a little like texture to it. It has different feels to the pictures you took on your film, but also because you put so much effort into it, if like it literally feels different. Um, and you can't like mess up your picture because you only have 36 frames and it costs so much money. Like each picture you take, you spend more time, like you're more careful. So I think that helps you take a better picture.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, um, and I just print them, frame them, and I used to put them on my wall in my apartment. People see it, and I think it's a pretty cool like conversation starter as well. Like you get to just like show off maybe a little bit, like the places you've been to and like the pictures you took. I think it's a fun a little hobby. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. What is or yeah, your favorite thing that you photographed so far?
I like taking pictures of people mainly.
Mm.
Um, Mostly my friends. You know, I think I think pictures, I think you can tell more story when you have people in it. Like when you look at a person in a picture, you probably think like, oh, what is he thinking? Or like, what is she doing? Uh, I like landscape too, but I think having people or person in it like tells more story. So
Mm.
I'll have this one picture of one of my closest friends just swimming in a lake in Switzerland, and I think really like that picture. Water is so like water's beautiful, the mountain's beautiful, and then he's just like floating in the middle of water. So,
Wow,
yeah, I think it's a cool picture.
that is amazing. I'm sure you have them scattered throughout your apartment and that they're
Oh
beautiful.
yeah.
Um, but I think to wrap up our episode, in line with our title, Dear Ram, where do I go from here? I'm curious, where are you kind of looking to go from here, and where do you see yourself, 5, 10 years down the line?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've So, you know, as I've said, I wanted to get a job in the US.
Mm-hmm.
And, now I'm here in Japan, but I haven't given up on my dream yet. So, and I also mentioned that I want to have a career where I can sort of be a bridge between the West and the East.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it'll be a great opportunity for me to, get some work experience in Japan, sort of like, you know, improve my Japanese, business Japanese. And, once I have that, maybe I'll try to come back to the US as an MBA student or like start my own business. But I think it's a good experience for me to like have both of, working experience, like both in US and both in Japan. Especially if I want to have that like bridging the globe career. So that's my plan.
That is incredible. Well, we're super
Thank you.
excited to see you pursue your cross-continental career dreams. I hope to see you here developing your own business. That would be super exciting. And we're so proud to have had you a part of the Fordham community and to still have you a part of the Fordham community. And thanks so much for joining us today for this podcast. If you're interested in learning more about the Fordham Career Center, check us out on social media at Fordham Careers. Want advice on how to craft the best resume and score the job or internship of your dreams? Log into Handshake and schedule an appointment with one of our career counselors. We look forward to helping you figure out where to go from here.